My sister embezzled $2.5 million and framed my wife to get her fired. With one ruthless move, I exposed her, and the law made her pay publicly. My sister Thelma, 35 years old, has always been fiercely competitive with everyone, particularly when it comes to professional accomplishments. Since she was a straight-A student who was accepted into a prominent college and immediately found a distinguished career after graduation, Thelma was always our parents' golden child. She never forgot that I was a more typical student who took a few years to figure out what I wanted to do. Being the successful member of our family has become Thelma's entire identity. She is a senior manager at one of the leading IT businesses in our city. Her accomplishments are continuously praised by our parents, who also use her as an example for the rest of us to follow. She lives in a fancy home in the greatest area of town and earns a very decent living. Every family get-together becomes an opportunity to highlight her most recent bonus or promotion. 3 years ago, while both of us were speaking at a tech conference, I met my wife Libby, 30 years old. Libby had the most amazing work ethic I had ever seen, and she was intelligent and motivated. She was from a very different family than ours. When she was 6 years old, her parents left Vietnam and took on several professions to support themselves, while maintaining stellar marks and eventually receiving her degree in computer technology. Libby had to work during high school and college to support her family. The thing that truly appealed to me about Libby was her humility. In spite of her success, she never disparaged others or boasted about her achievements. Rather, she was constantly attempting to guide younger developers and make others successful. We bonded right away since we both enjoy coding and solving problems. Last year, after 2 years of dating, we were married in a modest ceremony. Thelma had never been fond of Libby. I initially assumed it was simply her customary aloofness toward strangers, but it soon became apparent that Thelma viewed Libby as a danger. Thelma would frequently make subtle jabs about how Libby was squandering her skills at a smaller company, despite the fact that she was leading the engineering department at her startup and producing creative work. "That's cute, but at a real tech company like mine, you should apply for a junior position if you want to do actual important work," were some of the remarks she would make to break up Libby's employment stories. Our parents never mentioned Thelma's actions, and when I attempted to confront her about it, they blamed me for being overly sensitive and said that Thelma was only attempting to support Libby in her professional endeavors. Libby never took the bait or got into a fight with Thelma, and she always responded to her remarks with elegance. To Thelma's seeming annoyance, she would simply smile and shift the topic. When Libby received an amazing job offer from the same business where Thelma works, but in a different department, 6 months ago, everything truly came to a head. Better income, more responsibility, and the opportunity to oversee significant initiatives that could significantly impact the industry made it Libby's ideal position. She would be in charge of financial technology integration across several divisions, which was Libby's area of expertise at her firm. Thelma usually dominated the conversation, so when we broke the news to her during a family dinner, she became extremely silent. Our parents were ecstatic, discussing how the sisters-in-law could get together for lunch and how wonderful it would be to have both of their daughters working for the same esteemed organization. Thelma merely shoved food around her plate and said something ambiguous about how hiring practices must be evolving. Libby was doing well when she started the job. She was already making strides towards simplifying some of their antiquated systems, and her team adored her. Every day she would return home with excitement, sharing with me the difficulties she was facing and the advancements she was making. She was happier than I had ever seen her in her career. After only 2 weeks in her new position, Libby was abruptly called into HR and immediately let go. They said they had found that Libby had misrepresented her prior projects and employment experience on her resume. Libby was caught off guard. In her life, she had never told a lie. It didn't make sense because they had called all of her references and confirmed her prior job during the lengthy interview process. Libby was heartbroken when she came home. She sobbed for hours, claiming she didn't comprehend what had transpired. HR refused to even look at her copies of all project material and employment records. Like criminals, they simply escorted her out of the building. I began looking into it since something didn't make sense. I requested a friend of mine who worked in IT at the company to investigate the situation because he owed me a favor. I was furious at what he found. Thelma had brought fake proof that Libby had forged some of her employment history to HR in order to give the impression that Libby had misrepresented her position and accomplishments at her former employer. She had really produced fictitious emails and supporting paperwork. Thelma made no attempt to refute it when I challenged her about it. She stated that someone with Libby's past didn't belong at a prestigious company like theirs and that she was defending the company's brand. She blasted Libby for not being our kind of people and expressed her frustration at seeing underqualified, diversity candidates occupying unworthy positions. My sister's candid discussion of her prejudices was something I had never heard her do before, and it sickened me. I expected our parents to be as appalled as I was when I told them everything. They said that rather than making a huge deal out of it, we should deal with it within the family. They stated that Thelma most likely didn't mean any damage and was simply anxious about her job. They advised Libby to simply look for new employment and move on, stating that there were many other organizations that would be better suited for someone with her experience. Karma caught up to Thelma last week. Her own supervisor found out that she had been fabricating reports to exaggerate the performance of her team. She was promptly fired. Now that she needs money to pay her mortgage and other payments until she gets a new job, she is frantically texting and calling me. It seems that she has already spent all of her savings on her opulent lifestyle. Our parents are placing a lot of pressure on me to do the right thing and help Thelma maintain her house because they believe that family comes first and that she's still my sister. They keep stressing that Thelma made a mistake, but that she is family, while Libby is just an in-law. I declined, just as she left Libby alone after purposefully ruining her career. I told Thelma she was on her own. Thelma broke down in tears and apologized profusely, claiming that I'd been cruel and that she had made a mistake. However, I don't think she genuinely feels regret for what she did to Libby. She merely apologizes for needing assistance after being exposed for her own deceptions. Even though my sister might lose her house, am I the jerk for not helping her? Although it's not as good as the job she lost, Libby has since obtained another one. However, I'm still upset over Thelma's actions. I don't think I can ever forgive someone who intentionally wounded my wife because of their own prejudices and anxieties, despite our parents' constant insistence that I'm being too harsh and that I need to forgive my family. Thelma decided to start what I can only characterize as a smear campaign against Libby across our entire extended family, after I declined to assist her with her financial issues. She seems to be attempting to change the past such that she is the victim in this whole situation. Thelma brought a wholly made-up account of what happened to our extended family. In fact, she claimed that it was Libby who had been deceitful and manipulative. She falsely claimed that Libby had applied to her department on purpose. It was a whole other division, and had started attempting to appropriate Thelma's projects and claim credit for her work right away. Thelma stated that she had to notify HR of Libby's access to private documents pertaining to her team's projects in order to safeguard both the business and herself. She presented Libby as a corporate spy who had married me in order to gain access to Thelma's position inside the corporation. She even implied that, knowing that I was Thelma's brother, Libby had singled me out at the tech conference 3 years prior. In actuality, Libby was unaware of Thelma's existence until after we had been dating for a few months. The majority of our extended family seemed to fully believe Thelma's falsehoods, which is the saddest part. Once a huge fan of Libby and a constant admirer of her cuisine, our Aunt Linda now refuses to even look at her. Uncle Bob, who works in tech recruiting, even called me to warn me about how Libby might be using me to go up the corporate ladder. Our cousins have been making ambiguous remarks on social media about snakes in the family and gold diggers who destroy families. They have been phoning and emailing me nonstop, accusing me of betraying my own people for an outsider who attempted to destroy my sister's career. They don't seem to care that Thelma was fired for her own dishonesty. They have concluded that Libby must have planned that as retaliation as well. It's truly amazing the mental acrobatics they're employing to paint Thelma as the victim in all of this. My parents, who before at least seemed to be impartial, are now completely on Thelma's side. In fact, my mother had the audacity to tell me that she should have seen Libby was trouble from the moment she met her, along with other blatantly racist remarks that sickened me. She said things like, people from her background often have different values about honesty, and go back to her own community where she wouldn't cause problems for our family. My dad advised Libby to do the same. Our youngest sister, Amy, 28 years old, is the only one who has defended Libby, and her revelation has altered my entire understanding of Thelma. At last, Amy broke down and shared with us a story that occurred 5 years ago. Shortly after graduating, she had applied for a junior job at Thelma's company. She aced every interview and had outstanding credentials. Her application was abruptly denied because of character issues, even though the team wanted to recruit her. Amy learned that Thelma had also gone to HR at the time, with unfounded claims that Amy had cheated in college. It seems that Thelma had fabricated emails from Amy's college to bolster her allegations. Thelma had threatened to use her connections to blacklist Amy in the industry if she ever told anyone, so even though Amy was distraught, she kept silent about it. Amy was so disturbed by the incident that she ultimately accepted a job in a totally different industry. Thelma lost all control when Amy told her account in our family group chat and included screenshots of Thelma's threatening communications from that time. At 11 p.m., she stormed into Amy's flat, banging on the door and yelling that Amy was a traitor who was attempting to ruin her life. Amy claims she had no idea what secrets Thelma was referring to, but she was threatening to reveal all of her secrets. Additionally, Thelma promised to ensure Amy never again worked in the city. Amy had to call the police to get Thelma off the property because she was so scared. It's terrifying to hear my sister sound so insane. After she captured a portion of Thelma's breakdown on her phone, Thelma was even more incensed after the cops warned her about harassment. Our family is now utterly divided. Our parents continue to support Thelma, claiming that Amy must have misinterpreted what transpired 5 years ago and that she is merely envious of Thelma's accomplishments. In an attempt to portray Amy and me as permanently jealous troublemakers who are just out to harm poor, successful Thelma, they are accusing us of being disloyal and ungrateful for banding together against our sister when she is already down. They have even begun bringing up all of our childhood transgressions. I've begun compiling all of the proof of Thelma's behavior, including the police report from her breakdown, the testimonies from CO workers who saw her behavior, the phony emails she made about Libby, and the threatening texts she sent to Amy. After reviewing everything, the legal staff at Libby's new workplace believes we have a solid case against Thelma and her old employer for defamation and wrongful termination. However, my parents are now threatening to disown Amy and me if we destroy our sister's life over a misunderstanding. They claim that if we don't drop everything and help Thelma get back on her feet, they will write us both out of their will, and that pursuing legal action would demonstrate that we were never truly family. Since she doesn't feel safe in her own apartment, Amy is currently staying with us. Despite her own trauma from everything that has transpired, Libby has been a tremendous support system for her. Even though I'm more convinced than ever that confronting Thelma is the right thing to do, it still hurts to see my family fall apart like this. Numerous unpleasant facts about my family have come to light as a result of the entire scenario, which I suppose I always knew existed but never wanted to confront. I used to believe that Thelma's will to excel and her competitive nature were simply acts of ambition, but now I realize that they are a much more sinister and damaging trait. Everything we believed to be true about Thelma's behavior has been totally disproved. Rachel, a former co-worker of Thelma's, contacted Libby via LinkedIn last week. We were all surprised by what Rachel, Thelma's assistant manager for the previous 2 years, disclosed. Although it was undoubtedly a contributing factor, Rachel claims that Thelma's sabotage of Libby was motivated by more than just professional jealousy or prejudice. The true cause was much darker. Libby's new position would have provided her direct access to financial records and system logs, which may have revealed Thelma's years of falsifying the books. Despite her best efforts to conceal her own illegal acts at the company, documentation from Rachel demonstrated that, since Thelma was promoted to senior manager, she had been routinely manipulating the performance metrics for her department to make it appear as though her team was earning millions of dollars in fictitious revenue. She had set up shell businesses, faked contracts, and created phony client accounts. For years, she had been using these fictitious accounts to embezzle company revenue, taking a portion of the phony contracts and transferring it to her personal offshore accounts. Thelma went into a frenzy when Libby started working for the company and was given the responsibility of auditing and integrating all of the financial technology systems. Given her reputation for being meticulous and her experience with system integration, Libby would have unavoidably found out about Thelma's department's anomalies. Thelma fabricated the resume fraud narrative just 2 weeks into Libby's job, which is why she acted so swiftly to fire her. In reality, Rachel had been compiling proof of Thelma's deception for months, but because of Thelma's industry ties, had been too afraid to come out. Rachel ultimately made the decision to take action after witnessing how Thelma had ruined Libby's career in order to defend herself. She had amassed records of strange money transfers, screenshots of phony client accounts, and copies of false contracts that all pointed directly to Thelma. We gave the police and the company's internal inquiry team all of this material. Thelma had embezzled more than $2.5 million in the previous 3 years, according to the probe. Her activities constituted securities fraud, since the fictitious performance figures she disclosed had also affected the company's stock prices. However, the most heartbreaking discovery concerned our parents. When the detectives began tracking down the funds, they found that sizable sums had been going into accounts that belonged to our parents. They eventually acknowledged that they had been aware of Thelma's fraudulent conduct over the previous year after being presented with this evidence. Not only did they know, but they had been actively assisting her in concealing the funds. They had established offshore accounts and produced a paper trail that made the stolen money appear to be genuine investments by using their legal connections. They asserted that since Thelma was the one who stole the money, they had not technically committed any crimes and were only defending their daughter. I was disgusted by their attitude when I questioned them about their involvement in all of this. They said that, because Libby claims to care so much about family, she should understand their actions. They even attempted to claim that Libby's assistance in paying her parents' tuition expenses was equivalent to helping Thelma steal millions of dollars. They didn't seem to see the difference between assisting to cover up enormous fraud and working honest jobs to support your family. Their attitude was the worst. They were just sorry they were found out, not sorry for what they had done. In fact, according to my mother, none of this would have surfaced if Libby had been more understanding about her place and had discreetly departed the company when Thelma requested it. They continued to blame Libby for everything, claiming that her rigid job choices pushed them to take extreme steps. The involvement of our parents has upset Amy. She had always believed that our parents were simply too forgiving of Thelma and that she was the only toxic member of the family. Amy's entire opinion of our family has been completely destroyed by learning that they were complicit in her misdeeds. She can hardly sleep and has been experiencing anxiety episodes. Thelma is currently facing criminal charges from the firm for fraud and embezzlement. In addition, they are looking into a number of her close co-workers who may have participated in the plot. Although our parents are being investigated for their part in concealing the stolen funds, they have not yet been charged. Thelma is no longer there at all. She stopped answering all messages and cleaned out her home in the middle of the night. My parents say they don't know where Thelma might have gone, but the police are searching for her. I don't believe them at all, considering how they previously assisted her. Our family has experienced pain as well as justice in this story's last chapter. 2 weeks ago, Thelma was apprehended for attempting to enter Canada using forged documents. Our parents, as we thought, had assisted her in hiding in several places during her attempt to escape the country. In order to escape a longer term, she ultimately accepted a plea bargain. In addition to 3 years of supervised release, she will spend 2 years in federal prison for embezzlement and securities fraud. Thelma's scam was far more extensive than we first believed, according to the company's inquiry. Since she was initially promoted to management 6 years ago, she had been stealing money and falsifying statistics in order to hide her tracks. She had also been blackmailing a number of lower-level staff members, threatening to destroy their careers in the same way that she had done to Amy and Libby. All of this has been made possible by the tremendous assistance of Libby's new employer. Following the public revelation of Thelma's transgressions, Libby received a formal apology from her previous employer, along with an offer to resume her job. They have given her a sizable payout for wrongful termination, in addition to returning her to her previous position with a promotion and full back pay. More significantly, they are putting new rules into place to stop discrimination against workers from immigrant backgrounds and HR fraud. Our parents are dealing with the fallout on their own. Their cooperation with investigators helped them avoid criminal charges, but their role in Thelma's crimes is now well known in our town. Since the partners didn't want to run the risk of their reputation being damaged by association, they were compelled to leave their legal practice. They no longer hold the same position in all of the social circles they once controlled, and the majority of their pals have turned away. Rather than expressing regret, they have intensified their efforts to place the blame on others. Before Thelma was sentenced, they even attempted to write a letter to the judge, accusing Libby of manipulating circumstances to accuse Thelma out of jealousy. Given the strong proof of Thelma's culpability, the judge was not impressed. Additionally, they attempted to accuse Amy and me of plotting with Libby to embezzle Thelma's money and blame her, but this desperate attempt clearly failed. Amy has begun to put her life back together. While she searches for a new job away from our parents' influence, she has temporarily moved in with us. The company has also extended an offer to her, admitting that Thelma's bogus accusations were the reason behind her dismissal 5 years prior. After years of Thelma's manipulation and our parents' toxic behavior, she is finally receiving therapy. Her gradual recovery of confidence and realization that none of this was her fault is truly remarkable. Libby and I have stopped communicating with my parents and Thelma altogether. Our lawyer has made it plain that any attempt to get in touch with us will be viewed as harassment, and we have blocked them everywhere. Building our own family with individuals who share our values of integrity and support for one another is our main goal. After all the proof, a number of our cousins who at first thought Thelma was lying have apologized, and we're carefully mending our ties with those who appear to be truly sorry. Some family members continue to maintain that we ought to have kept matters within the family and protected Thelma. Last week, my aunt called and said that we are bad people for allowing Thelma to go to prison and that real families stick together no matter what. However, Thelma's total lack of regret, even in court, has only served to reinforce our decision. She merely expressed regret for trusting the wrong people, specifically Amy and Libby, to reveal her wrongdoings. We have learned from this entire experience that sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you are born into. Instead of the poisonous allegiance and corruption that Thelma and our parents attempted to impose on us, Libby, Amy, and I are forging a new sort of family founded on integrity, respect, and genuine support.